Okay, let's talk about brains, baby. All right, let's just get into it. We're going to talk about a brain. We can maybe do this all in one. We got to talk about the brain, and then we got to talk about, let's see, what else we got to talk about after the brain. It's hard to think and draw at the same time. So this part here that I'm drawing is the brain stem, which would then go down into your spinal cord. Let's draw a little part coming up off this. Then we got to talk about the meninges, one of my favorite science words. The meninges. And the blood-brain barrier. All fascinating stuff. So I don't want to like shortchange any of this. All right, I'm doing pretty good here. This might not make any sense, but you know, I think it helps to kind of simplify the brain a little bit. Because if I just slap up a picture here, you really ain't gonna understand these. The brain is a confusing thing to look at because it's just a bundle of freaking neurons, you know? But maybe we'll go back to that video if we got time at the end here. It's looking pretty cool, I gotta say. Gotta kind of like it. All right, we got that boy. We'll draw this guy in red. This is kind of like your little fear center right here. And then this goes back. This is kind of like your memory center and stuff back here. Oops. Your fear and pleasure is strongly tied to your memories, which makes a lot of sense. I don't quite like, it's a little off, but it's okay. And then over here we've got, this is probably actually my favorite part of the brain. It's called your cerebellum. And we looked at this in the video actually, but it's kind of this little roundy part, and then it looks like a little tree in there. It kind of actually loops up and makes actually probably my actual favorite part of the brain. Looks like a little pine cone there, called your pineal gland. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And so this part in here looks like little beautiful tree branches. It's obviously way more detailed than this, but you get the idea. Okay, and then we kind of got the rest of the brain. See, now it's all coming together. You're probably like, what the fuck is that boy drawing? Okay, there we go. All right, that's our brain. And this would have obviously like brain wrinkles and all that jam. Pretty good. Pretty good stuff. Okay, I'm actually not going to draw in all those wrinkles just to kind of keep it similar. So we're looking at a cross section of the brain. So this is a mid-sagittal cut. So it's a cut right down the center, mid-sagittal, and then we peel that person up. This was on your lab exam. We're looking at now the side view of the brain. So this would be like if you looked at my brain like this. Cut me in half and you looked at it. All right. Well, let's kind of start down here. This whole thing is the brain stem. This whole thing is the brain stem. It's like our old lizard brain. takes care of stuff. We'll go through. Let's actually just go through these one at a time. So this is the medulla oblongata. All right. And this boy, what is it good for? Regulates heart rate. So we're just going to label these and then kind of talk about what they do. Regulates heart rate, breathing, and also controls your tongue. Bam, crushing these. All right, up here, we got the pons. Pretty similar to the medulla oblongata. This boy also regulates breathing. And eye movement, not movement, sleep, and face control. All right, so pretty basic stuff. Control. Okay, let's see here. What do I want to do next? All right, so we'll kind of stay with basic stuff. So this is our cerebellum. This is our cerebellum. Cerebellum, 2 L's. And this one is very important for coordination and body movement. So coordination, body, movement, muscle activity. So if you're like kind of a klutz or you're really athletic, you can thank your cerebellum. So it really helps like body positioning and things like that. So I love to dance. You guys saw me dancing. My cerebellum hecka active when I be bumping and grinding, cutting rugs. Okay. Okay, so we're kind of lizardy brain. Let's stay with that. Let's go amygdala. Okay, so amygdala. This is we're all familiar with this. This is our fear. Pleasure. Yeah, lizard brain. Fight or flight. Okay. And it's tied to memory. Tied to memory. So like if you have some kind of phobia associated with a trauma, that's because you're listening to your amygdala and your other part here, which we'll label, which is part of it's actually right here in between these, your hippocampus. Hippocampus. This is long-term memory. Long-term memory. And you see that it's very connected to this amygdala. So let's say you almost drowned or something when you were young, and now you won't go in the water. That's because the memory associated with that fear now keeps you out of the water. And so I would recommend that past experiences, and this is from a psychologist, Adler, past experiences don't define you currently. And that past experience is out of your control, but your current situations are, in fact, in your control. So a lot of what we need to do is eliminate these kind of lizard brain cycles that happen in our brains. This is also where addiction kicks in, because we sense pleasure and we remember that intense pleasure, but then we don't think it through with our prefrontal cortex. So let's just talk about that now. Let me actually, oh wow, look at that. Let me move these all down. So we got our cortex, and we got our prefrontal cortex is where a lot of our thinking occurs. We'll just label our cortex here. Cortex is the outside of the brain. Cortex, okay? And this is associated with thinking, learning, memory also is stored there, attention, language, sensory inputs also go here, interpretations. So like all the oh, this is a fuzzy microphone. Oh look. Dang it, the birdies scare so easily. Oh look, there's a bird. All this stuff. And personality. Lots is kind of up here. All right, let's be stealthy about this. There's a birdie. Look at the birdie, man. He says, yeah, mom, make the flaking. Birdie. It's cute. I'm not from California. I don't know what kind of bird that is. I need to learn my California birds. Okay, let's keep cruising. All right, couple of cool ones. Right here, it doesn't look like much. Doesn't look like a whole lot of anything right there. We got kind of this tongue sticking down. These guys are actually really tightly connected with each other. We'll start with this guy. So this is your hypothalamus. We'll talk about the thalamus in a minute here. Hypothalamus. And this boy is also important for, I'll put him in blue, heart rate. This is, your hypothalamus is like your homeostasis center. That's the best way to put it. Homeostasis center. So this regulates keeping your body in balance, different aspects of your body. Like heart rate, keeps your body in balance. Something like heart rate, blood pressure, osmolarity, things like that. So if you ever hear the word homeostasis, your hypothalamus is kind of monitoring that, and then it makes some of the hormones to regulate that. Also, and we'll talk about a couple of those. Okay, and very tightly tied to your hypothalamus is this little guy here called your pituitary. Pituitary. Okay? And this is a hormone center. The hormone production and release center. Hormones are molecules that we send as signals to control the body. So this is like growth hormone, metabolism hormones, and reproductive. So like your follicle stimulating, we'll talk about those. Luteinizing hormone. Things like that affect your reproduction, not pre-production, reproduction. Reproduction. Okay? Okay. And the hypothalamus, so this makes a bunch of hormones, but this also makes some hormones. The hypothalamus makes a couple hormones, oxytocin, and also antidiuretic hormone. Look, if anybody ever says I can't spell, you can tell them that that's my freaking D, bro. I just spelled antidiuretic hormone. Okay? And it stores them, and they are stored in the pituitary for later release. Okay, that's pretty cool. So there's this relationship between the hypothalamus, the homeostasis center, and then this kind of like a hormone maker, but also storage system. It's kind of like the liver and the gallbladder, if you want to think of it that way. All right. Oxytocin's a pretty interesting one. We'll talk about antidiuretic later. We'll talk about oxytocin later too, but let's talk about that one a little bit. We talked about that. Oxytocin, I think we maybe talked about that. This guy is like love and bonding hormone. Pretty interesting. Stimulates lactation. I think did we talk about that already? As a neurotransmitter? No. Where did I talk about that? I don't remember. I feel like I just talked about it. It does things like stimulate lactation and sperm. Is it maturation? I think so. Sperm swimming? Yeah, we'll just leave it for lactation in women. Okay. Oxytocin's a pretty interesting one. And sidebar, chocolate simulates oxytocin. So chocolate kind of makes your brain feel makes you feel loved by eating some chocolate. Chocolate's also very good for you. People think it's bad, but it's not. The sugar is the bad part. All right, in the center, I didn't draw this one, but we'll draw it now. This is the hypothalamus, kind of right in the center here. We've got the thalamus. So this would be the thalamus. Whoa. Thalamus. And this boy is important for, it's the sensory input relay. It does more than this, but this is all I care that you know. Sensory input relay station. So all of your senses except smell first go here. So your sight, all that, they all tie in there to your thalamus. Cortex we already did. All right, we're almost done here. We only got two more I want to talk about. All right, this guy right here is called your corpus callosum. And this one connects the two halves of your brain together so that it coordinates them. And the halves of your brain are very interesting. Your right side, I think I'm getting this right. I was kind of confused these. Your right side is your more creative, free-flowing side, and your left side is your more analytical, keep things in order side. Connects the two halves of the brain. And then last but not least, my favorite, because it is the most mysterious to me. This is our pineal gland. Okay, and the pineal gland actually receives light information for sleep regulation. Okay. All right. I do want that in orange for sleep regulation. So this releases melatonin. Okay. All right. That's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. So if you have light coming into your eyes, and there's even studies that show even if you just have light touching your skin, photons touching your skin, that will go to your pineal gland and prevent you from releasing melatonin. So you won't sleep properly or as deeply. This is why it's important to sleep in dark environments. But even like if you just take a blue light and pin it on your finger, that can mess up your sleep regulation. It doesn't even have to be entering into your retinas. Very interesting. Okay? The other interesting thing about this is researchers have found DMT crystals in the pineal gland. DMT is a crystal that when you kind of break it up, it will emit light. Like add pressure to these crystals and they will emit light. And so you like crack it and now it glows. All right. That's pretty interesting. We don't know if the pineal gland actually produces that DMT or where it's coming from. But it's a crystal where if you like clang it together, it'll emit light. And this is a light sensitive organ. Okay. DMT is also a psychedelic drug. So if you really don't know. Why can I not spell? Psychedelic. That seems right to me, but it's not. Psychedelic. Okay, psychedelic drug. All right. One of the main sources for this, you can get it from plants, but also the Sonoran desert toad venom. So you take a Sonoran desert toad, you collect its venom, and you smoke that, and you will go to a psychedelic realm. And you'll see like these little elves and all kinds of crazy stuff. But that drug is naturally found inside of us. We have found it in our pineal gland from non-DMT users. So it's being made somewhere in the body and then it can accumulate in our pineal gland. And our pineal gland is a light sensitive organ. And so then my question is, then are those crystals being kind of manipulated and then we're seeing light from those crystals inside of our pineal gland? All right. And so this is thought to be the pineal gland is thought to be the source of our third eye, if you've ever heard of that. That would be our sixth chakra. Which is interesting. That comes from like Asian Indian philosophy. And if you look at this is the eye of Ra. Let me see if I can grab this and make it a little smaller. See how I did here. Didn't quite nail it. Pretty close though. If you look at the eye of Ra, it's pretty interesting because it looks like the inside of our brain. I kind of needed this to be squirted out a little bit more. I drew it a little smushed together. And this is kind of a representation of the pineal gland in this eye of Ra. This would be kind of the amygdala, thalamus, hypothalamus. Not the thalamus, the hypothalamus. And, this is Egyptian culture, thousands of years ago. They kind of knew the source of this third eye, which is pretty interesting. And there's more to this story. I don't really have the authority to talk about this. I don't know that much about it. But this eye kind of fits over the inside of our brain, the eye of Ra specifically. And the Egyptians talk about the pineal gland and all this in the third eye and blah, 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 blah. Pretty interesting stuff. I recommend looking into it. Okay? All right, let's keep cruising. That's what I expect you to know about the brain. These ones here and their basic functions. Pretty easy, pretty cool, pretty straightforward. Okay, I'm actually going to cheat here. I'm going to copy this boy and we're going to talk about the ventricles. All right, so let me just erase this out. Get rid of these parts I don't want to see. It's It's all a little too complicated. All right. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so our brain is not just chilling in our skull. Our brain also, it has these things around it, a whole tissue around it called meninges. So it's kind of encased. I'm kind of exaggerating how big it is, but it's encased in something called meninges, and we'll go into the kind of tissue details of that. And then this inner space here is full of fluid. So let's draw that like this, and maybe like this. So there's fluid that then, it's called cerebral spinal fluid, that then pumps around the brain, like so. And there are all kinds of ventricles. They all also kind of come up through here, and they wrap around like so, and come back down and around. And this actually pumping of the cerebral spinal fluid is thought to be stimulated, or it is stimulated by your respiratory system. And it's thought to be one of the reasons why you go through something called satori or satori, which is a spiritual experience that happens when you are meditating, which is the result of this cerebral spinal fluid pumping around your pineal gland. Pretty interesting. I recommend a book called Why God Won't Go Away. It's a look at the biological kind of principles surrounding spiritual experiences like prayer and meditation from like monks, nuns, and priests. And they throw people in an MRI machine, functional MRI machine, and look at the brain and actually look at what's happening when people are experiencing those things. I read that book when I was an atheist, and it was very interesting. I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, God is like encoded in our biology. I still didn't believe it at the time, but anyway. Okay, so we have things called meninges, that surround the brain, and I'll go into the details of those. They surround the brain, and in between the brain and the meninges, there is cerebral spinal fluid. And this comes from the blood, which comes from the blood. You can think of it as like filtered blood. And what does it contain? It contains things like glucose. Ketones are an important food source for your brain. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of ketosis and not eating carbs and all this shit. Oxygen, proteins, water, of course, and salts, ions. All right, and the cerebral spinal fluid kind of goes in this direction and then in this direction. Okay. All right, that's kind of all I expect you to know about those. These are called ventricles. I don't necessarily care that you know that. All right, let's zoom in here. Oops. Well, that was actually not actually that bad. Let's zoom in here. I'll do it over here. Let's do a little zoom in here and draw this kind of tissue out in more details here. Okay, so if we look at the outside, it looks something like this. So we're going to be drawing our meninges here. Oops. Just zooming out to make this line kind of thicker. All right, so we got this outer layer. This here would be our skull. This would be our skull, like our bone. And then just underneath that, we got a little cell layer like this. Draw these a little bigger so it don't take me so dang long. Okay, and this is on the outside, near the skull. Let's see if I can just copy this. Speed things up. I know I'm going long today, guys. Let me erase this. I just want a couple layers of these cells. Beautiful. Look at that. Look at that cheater style. All right. All right, so we got that cell layer. Then we got another cell layer, which has some interesting little features. We'll first just draw it kind of like this. Connects to that layer up there. And then it's got these kind of spidery looking feet coming down. Like so. And this is actually what provides the space for the cerebral spinal fluid. So I'm trying to draw this in like 3 dimensions. So these little feet would be further back. These would be closer to the foreground. This boy would be further back. This boy would be closer to the foreground. This lady would be further back. Oh yeah, that's a good looking spider leg. Yeah, spider leg. Okay. All right. Then we got a tiny little thin layer here. Okay. Tiny little thin layer there. Let me move my phone. Okay. And then we're into the brain. So now we're into the cortex of the brain here. So this would be the cortex of the brain, the outside part of the brain. And it actually comes in here, and there's these little pathways for this to travel. Pretty cool. And there's like some of my favorite cells in the brain, which are pyramidal cells. They look like little pyramids. We'll draw a couple of those in. Little beautiful pyramidal cells. These are actually really, really beautiful. I'd Google some of those. Okay. All right. Then we got something like a capillary coming in here, running along. Go behind that, come in down here, go in a couple different directions. So that'd be part of our blood system. All right, let's label these bad boys. Okay, so this, we already did this. This is our skull. This is our dura mater. It's durable. It's on the outside. Dura mater. Okay, skull, dura mater. This would be our remember spider legs? Arachnoid layer. Arachnoid layer, and these little things are called arachnoid trabeculae. Trabeculae is like little convoluted area with opening. So arachnoid trabeculae, like spongy bone has a lot of trabeculae. Arachnoid trabeculae, like Alex Trebek. Very convoluted way to ask a question or to have a game show is to have the questions be answered. That's pretty convoluted. And then this is just a little. We have a person in this class named Mia Little. This is a Pia Little. It's a little layer. Pia Little. Pia mater. Pia mater. And these are actually one T. Pia mater. Dura mater. All right, and then this is the cortex of the brain. Cortex of the brain. This This would be a pyramidal cell. Pyramidal cell. Pyramidal or pyramidal. Edit, I spelled it wrong. Pyramidal. Sometimes I just want to quit life. Pyramidal cell, we'll put it on there. Okay, and then this is a capillary. Capillary. So for what's a capillary? It's part of your cardiovascular system. All right. All right. This whole thing here, this dura, arachnoid, and pia, this is your meninges. So if you have meningitis, oh boy, you don't want that. That's swelling of these. Now you have some kind of infection likely in your meninges. You got swelling, you got pressure on your brain, you potentially have some infection. Bruh, you don't want none of that. Meninges, meningitis, or swelling of the meninges caused by bacteria. You definitely don't want that. Okay, and how do we prevent stuff like that? Well, we have this very specialized system called the blood-brain barrier. And this is the last thing that we'll cover. So what we're going to do is take a transverse cut of that, and we're going to look at it right here. All right, well, we're going to bring back our friend. So remember, our cardiovascular system can be leaky, right? And in our brain, I mean, this is our brain. We want extra protection here. So we have that. So we're going to take a look at our tube of our cardiovascular system. We're going to draw like a tube. These would be our endothelial cells. And they're pretty tightly associated here. They're not super leaky. This would be a simple squamous epithelium, if you remember. I mean, there's this little part here going to be leaky because we need to add some plasma and things to make the cerebral spinal fluid. The cerebral spinal fluid is caused by, you know, your leaky capillaries in your brain. All right, and we'll finish that one by making it a little leaky there. But if you get, let's say you get a cut, and you got bacteria now in your blood, you don't want that to go to your brain and eat your fucking brain. Like, to put it very seriously. That's what would happen, and then we'd all be dead very quickly. Okay? So, we have something called our blood-brain barrier. We have less leaky capillaries in our brain, just in general. Capillaries, capillaries. Don't need that apostrophe. All right, less leaky capillaries in our brain. And we've got a whole other protection system. So, we got these other cells that come and they wrap around this bad boy. I wonder if anybody actually remembers what these are called. So they look something like that. They put these little feet kind of around the capillary. And they form a secondary barrier. I'm not going to finish it off, but you kind of see how this would work. We'll make this one wrap around real long. And there'd be one more, maybe from actually another one wrapping around the other side. All right, and this cell kind of looks like a star. And it is a star. It's a star of the blood-brain barrier for sure. And the Astros, it's a baseball team. Stars. Oh, hi birdies. My birdies are back. Boom. This is an astrocyte. Astrocyte. Astro means star, and cyte means cell. It's a star cell. They wrap feet. They're like pseudopods, like in an amoeba. They wrap their feet around your blood vessels in your brain to add an additional barrier of protection from infection, and toxins. Pretty nifty indeed. Okay, that's cool. And this would be a type of glial cell. That's pretty cool, right? But this creates a problem actually for us. It kind of creates a major problem. Let's go back to tissues, going back pretty far, just so we could see another little example of this. See it right there. So you got this one astrocyte, bunch of feet on the blood vessel, and then you'd have another astrocyte, right? You can see them. Let's see, do we have a, yep, right there. This is pretty good actually. So you see this is the blood vessel here, and this astrocyte and this astrocyte are all kind of putting their feet all over this blood vessel to help plug it up. And this astrocyte, you can see, also attaches to the neuron. So this astrocyte can also feed kind of directly oxygen and things and nutrients directly into the neuron. Pretty nifty. There's a bunch of these. It's really cool, actually. Like astrocyte, 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 astrocyte. There's so many of them. Okay. Very cool. All right, let's get back to business. Okay, so, but this causes some problems now because we have this extra barrier. There it is. We have this extra barrier. So this extra barrier creates problems for like drug uptake in the brain. Or sometimes yeah, other, not just like medicine, not just like drug, I don't mean just like drugs, like medicine. And like some nutrients can't get into the brain. Like the brain can really only take, like, yeah, it can only take like sugar, like glucose, ketones, some protein, but like lipids aren't going just straight into the cerebral spinal fluid. So like creates problems for drug uptake in the brain, limits nutrient use in the brain, right? The brain, I mean, think about all the ATP your brain is using. All of the ATP your brain is using. And why is your brain using ATP? Well, 1/3 of all your ATP goes to the sodium-potassium pump. And what are your neurons constantly doing? Using a sodium-potassium pump to keep their insides different from their outsides, right? To keep the outside positive and the inside negative, so that they can then send signals. And these are just pump, 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 bada 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 pump, 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 bada 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 pump, 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 bada 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 bada. All right, that's it. I'm done with the monkey business. That's it for the day. I'm not going to do a discussion post this week because I bloviated about the nervous system. Hope you loved it. I enjoyed it. I'll see y'all guys next week. I'll see y'all in the lab and all that. Later. Use your brain.